The Beatles. There's no doubt that the Beatles were the greatest band ever to walk the earth. But without the words and music of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison and Ringo Starr, they wouldn't be so different from their respectable contemporaries and every successful group that's come since.
What did you want to do before you became a Beatle?
Nothing. I didn't want to do anything else. Honest.
What do you define as a Beatle?
Is what we are, you know, a group, singing and selling records. That's what I wanted to do.
Their songs moved people, and the fascinating stories behind the lyrics has inspired new generations of musicians for decades. As the band grew in popularity, their songwriting evolved and changed over time and through their life experiences. From writing a handful of hits in a hotel bedroom to writing entire albums on their tour bus between shows. Their songs became the soundtrack of every teen and young adult at the height of Beatlemania, and even decades later, their music remains the standard by which all others are measured.
Yeah, we'll probably carry on writing music forever, you know, whatever else we're doing, because you just can't stop. You find yourself doing it whether you want to or not.
Though they have dozens of musical masterpieces in their arsenal, one theme that's ever present in every album and most singles is love. (1962) One of the great strengths of the Beatles was that by 1962, the year they cut their first record, they were already seasoned performers, well versed in American soul, gospel, rhythm and blues and rock and roll. Most of what they knew had been learned the hard way. They knew how songs were constructed because, unable to afford sheet music, they had to decipher lyrics and work out chord changes by listening to records over and over again. Having played rock and roll to adoring teenagers at the lunchtime Cavern Club sessions in Liverpool, they knew how to excite, calm, and seduce an audience. At this time, the Beatles' material was standard beat group fare. The best-known songs by the best-known rock and roll artists.
McCartney was famous for saying, I remembered Lennon was playing things like the Del Vikings' Come Go With Me, and Lennon didn't know the words. He was singing through McCartney, thought, this is fantastic. This guy doesn't even know some of the songs, some of the lyrics, he just keeps singing anyways, making up stuff as good as the original lyrics, and in many ways wittier and funnier than the original lyrics. So the young Paul McCartney was impressed, and they went and had a few bottles, and they bonded that day, that July day, 1957. And that really was a big bang moment. The world has never stopped being influenced by the friendship between Mr. Lennon and Mr. McCartney when they were just kids, formed that day.
Studying the music of these artists taught Lennon and McCartney the basics of songwriting. When they came together at McCartney's house to write their own material, it was a case of reassembling the familiar chords and words to make something distinctively theirs.
He and John Lennon, even from those early days in 1957, started having a close relationship, writing and playing together. Of course, he was still on rhythm guitar when George Harrison joined the band as the original lead guitarist, and that was in 1958.
Well, you know, yeah, it's like that. You know, if things that happen to you in your day, I think it comes into your songs. But it's strange where they come from. I couldn't begin to tell you, really.
The words were essential to create sounds and impressions at this stage, rather than to convey a message. Love Me Do. In Britain, Love Me Do was the Beatles' first hit, and like the group image, it was all pretty strange to a generation that had spent the last 2 or 3 years listening to fairly insipid pop performed by men with short haircuts and big grins. Love Me Do was primarily written by McCartney in 1958 and 1959 while playing truant from school at age 16. Lennon contributed the middle 8. The song was later credited to Lennon and McCartney. Their practice at the time was to scribble songs in a school notebook, dreaming of stardom, always writing another Lennon and McCartney at the top of the page. When they played this for an audition with Parlophone Records, the producer they auditioned for was George Martin, who became a key figure in Beatles history, as he helped shape their sound.
Quite knocked out by the reception everyone's giving to it. It really is great.
Did you know that you had such a phenomenon on your hands 30 years ago?
You couldn't really believe ahead that it would be like this, but it's wonderful that it did.
Yeah, it's hard to describe a relationship. You know, they either say Martin did everything, or the Beatles did everything. It was neither one, you know. George had done little of, no rock and roll when we met him, and we'd never been in a studio, so we did a lot of learning together. He had a very great musical knowledge and background.
He started tinkering with the song right away, adding the harmonica part. Fortunately, Lennon knew how to play the harmonica and was able to come up with something. Lennon always sang the lead vocal, but McCartney had to take over when his harmonica part was added. He claims that you can hear the fear in his voice at the audition. The Beatles recorded 3 versions of this song with 3 different drummers. At their first Parlophone audition in June 1962, Pete Best was still their drummer. When they recorded it in September, Ringo Starr had taken over as their drummer. But when Martin decided it would be the single, he had them record it again a week later. They agreed to have another go at Love Me Do, but Martin had hired a session musician, Andy White, to play on drums. A fairly normal procedure in recording studios, but a massive disappointment for Ringo.
It's hard to say who did what, you know. I mean, he taught us a lot, and I'm sure we taught him a lot by our sort of primitive musical ability, which is all I have still. You know, I still have to have something to translate what I'm trying to say all the time. And so it was a mutual benefit.
Starr didn't pitch a fit when he got bumped at the session, but he was very upset and felt really insecure, especially since the Beatles had just fired a drummer. The version with Starr drumming was the UK single, but the version on the album featured White's drumming.
Early on in the Beatles, it's well known that George Martin was under some pressure at Parlophone to decide which guy is going to be the leader of the band. You had Brian Poole and the Tremolos, Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps. That was just the way it was done. And he was trying to think, who do I want to lead the band? And he couldn't decide if John Lennon's powerful, dominant personality or the more malleable, adaptable, more pleasant, easy to digest personality of Paul McCartney. And he even said later that in the back of his mind, he thought, you could George Harrison, he could almost be the leader of this band. We could put him, so he didn't really know what to do. And he finally decided, don't have a leader of the band. It's unique that you've got these personalities that no one's totally eclipsing or overshadowing the others. So why doesn't that be the group dynamic? They're moving forward, but instead of, say, as I said before, Brian Poole with the Tremolos back here, this guy's out front, they're coming forward, now this guy's out front, now they're coming forward, and this guy's out front, this guy's now out front. Why not that? And that became the famous Beatles dynamic. When they came to America, of course, Ringo, or the early 64 through maybe late 64, Ringo was the one everybody loved.
With Love Me Do, the Beatles were at last out, in the shops, on the streets, in the air, on the jukeboxes, though not many people at the time could possibly have imagined that so much would develop from such a simple, basic song.
You have to write it true. No one comes out of the box writing Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. No one comes out of the box writing Live and Let Die for a movie. You write some pretty ropey stuff and you get the hang of it. By the time they're leaving Hamburg, they've turned out Love Me Do, and they're getting ready to be the Beatles that we know and love, both as personalities in the public arena, I mean, and songwriters.
1963. The Beatles had 5 years to prepare for their first album and 5 months to prepare for their second. After years of meeting at McCartney's house, with hours of spare time on their hands, they were now forced to write in hotel rooms, tour buses, and dressing rooms, anywhere they could snatch a quiet moment. Such pressures caused some songwriters to hit a wall, but it proved to be a positive stimulus to Lennon and McCartney, who...
Yeah, we'll probably carry on writing music forever, you know, whatever else we're doing. Because you just can't stop. You find yourself doing it whether you want to or not.
Lennon and McCartney seemed to have an innate sense of what their public wanted to hear. Believing that it was important for each girl in the audience to feel that they were singing personally to her, many of their songs had the word "you" in the title. In the early days, they'd been able to write for an audience they could see and for people they knew. Everything changed once they became successful. Suddenly, the police had to devise ingenious ways of smuggling them in and out of venues, and they were even becoming famous in countries they hadn't visited.
Why do you think they get a bigger reception abroad than they're getting at home now?
Because they haven't seen us over there, you know. They're getting to know us over here that much, you know. I think that's why it's dying off, actually. Everyone in Britain has seen us now.
At the height of Beatlemania, often pursued by scores of screaming fans, they still managed to write a steady stream of successful singles.
In terms of media reaction and public reaction, I've seen nothing since Beatlemania to be mentioned in the same breath. I include Madonna and Michael Jackson, all these people that I have the greatest respect for and have bought the recordings of. Nothing was like Beatlemania. The mania part of that is key, is primary. It was nuts.
Conquering America, the constant international travel, and the move to London were beneficial for their songwriting as it exposed them to a greater variety of influences. Everybody they met seemed to want to turn them on to something new. McCartney was becoming more familiar with stage musicals, theatre and classical music. Meanwhile, Lennon was holed up in his Kensington flat, listening to imported albums by black American groups like The Miracles and the Marvelettes. All My Loving. This was the first time McCartney wrote the words to a song before the music.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips I'm missing and hope that my dreams will.
The song began as a poem he conceived while he was shaving one morning, thinking about his girlfriend, Jane Asher, whom he met when she interviewed him for the magazine Radio Times. The resulting article, designed to show the effect that the Beatles were having on young people, was published in May 1963, with a photograph of Jane early on, looking mature and pensive, contrasted with a later photo of her feigning hysterics. Her comment on the Beatles was, "Now these I could scream for." Little did she know at the time that she would become the best known of all McCartney's girlfriends and would inspire some of his greatest love songs. She met with the group after the show, and it wasn't long until she and McCartney became locked in conversation. Shortly afterwards, they began dating, and before the end of 1963, McCartney had moved into a room at Asher's Wimpole Street home. This was a significant change for McCartney because he was in one of the most expensive areas of London's West End with a family that had important social connections within a year of leaving his council house in Allerton, Liverpool. Like so many Beatles songs, now that they were almost permanently on tour, it was about being separated by a loved one but continuing to stay in contact and sending all his love. She Loves You. Although the Beatles had already taken Britain's #1 spot twice in 1963, it was She Loves You which took them to the toppermost of the poppermost, as they mockingly used to call it. The Beatles tell quite a tale in this tidy pop song. Some poor guy thinks he's lost his girl for good, but he's redeemed when he finds out from a friend that she still loves him. There's even a moral at the end of the story. Pride can hurt you too. Good advice when arguing with a loved one. The rapid expansion of Beatlemania from regional to national phenomenon can be put down to the Beatles' appearance on Sunday night at the London Palladium, a television show broadcast live from the heart of London in 1963. Witnessed by a national TV audience of 15 million, screaming fans mobbed the theatre, and many of those who packed the streets outside found themselves on the front page of next day's Fleet Street newspapers. Not only had the Beatles transformed popular music, but they had become a phenomenon of post-war Britain. Suddenly, they found their photos plastered all over the national papers. The single that just happened to be in the centre of this storm was She Loves You. Lennon and McCartney wrote the song in Newcastle. McCartney remembered being with Lennon in their hotel room, sitting on separate beds, playing their acoustic guitars. Their first 3 singles had been declarations of love with the word "me" in the title. This time it was McCartney's idea to switch the approach by removing themselves and writing about a love between 2 other people, she and you. I Want to Hold Your Hand. There was a piano in the basement den of the Ashers' home in Wimpole Street, where Lennon and McCartney would sometimes work. It was there that they came up with I Want to Hold Your Hand, the song that was to finally break them in America when it reached the #1 spot in January 1964.
Their first meeting with the American press brings forth an interview laced with quips and humor. You'd laugh too, with a gross of $17 million.
It was a remarkable achievement because no British pop artists had ever really cracked America. According to Lennon, I Want to Hold Your Hand sprang into being when McCartney hit a chord on the piano, having come up with an opening line. Lennon turned to him and said, "That's it, do that again."
Generally, I used to do that for a little while. I used to kind of think, I'll play it to so-and-so and see if he or she likes it. But I think in the end, you've got to like it yourself. That's the big one.
Few songs in the pop music universe are as sweet and tender as I Want to Hold Your Hand. Of course, the song is fairly conceited in its inception. Lennon and McCartney became quickly aware that teenage girls were the main drivers of their commercial success, and they intended to accommodate their wants and needs. But there's something undeniably charming about this song.
got something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
1964, A Hard Day's Night. A Hard Day's Night marked a breakthrough, as it was the first of their albums where every track was a Beatles original. Lennon, who was the major contributor to 10 of the album's 13 tracks and the founder member of the Quarrymen, was the unacknowledged leader in those days.
So the band dynamic, one thing that was important is McCartney/Lennon or Lennon/McCartney. So definitely those two were the songwriters and main lyricists in the band. And I think that early days, like definitely the lighter songs, the ones that are more poppy, more uplifting, for the most part, those are written by McCartney. Lennon has the darker, more brooding singles. And you can definitely tell that. I think there was a lot of tension in the band between that writing relationship. It's one of the most celebrated and amazing writing relationships in popular music history, but I think again there was always a little bit of a struggle as to who was the frontman in the Beatles. This is natural, it's going to happen in that sort of situation.
Although McCartney was more musically accomplished, having mastered guitar and piano ahead of Lennon, they still maintained the same junior to senior pupil relationship that started when they met in 1957. Lennon later recognized that this was the period of his greatest dominance in the Beatles, and it was only when, in his own words, that he became self-conscious that McCartney began to take over. 7 of the songs were written for the film A Hard Day's Night. The Beatles were still writing pop songs to order, but putting more of themselves into the lyrics. At first, the film of A Hard Day's Night was conceived purely to sell a soundtrack album. But, as with everything the Beatles touched in 1964, the film turned into a great commercial success. The idea was to recreate the delirium of Beatlemania, charting the group's astonishing rise to fame in the style of a black-and-white television documentary.
People see Hard Day's Night and you see the Beatles. It lets their personalities come out. You see Paul being a very diplomatic kind of guy, trying to hope things work out. Lennon kind of being a wise guy. Ringo being kind of a cuddly everyman again with a capital E. George Harrison being kind of a quiet guy who says some very quiet, demure, but really funny, dry remarks. Their personalities come to the fold. You see the Beatles playing their tunes. So we've got the Beatles, we've got their music. But again, A Hard Day's Night isn't about the Beatles, and it's not about their music. It's about Beatlemania. It is about people going crazy for a band. That is the subject matter of the movie. And in that, even though it's fictionalized, Dick Lester's given us a great documentary.
The Beatles were pleased with the final result. Although they knew it only showed one side of their personalities and wasn't as realistic as it could have been, they recognized that A Hard Day's Night avoided the cliches of most pop movies.
4 crown princes receive an accolade from the show world's charitable organization, and we hardly need to mention that they need no charity except from exasperated parents.
I'd just like to say the same as the others. Thanks for the Purple Hearts.
And they did not sing.
And I Love Her. McCartney's love of rock and roll was never a way of heaping scorn on the popular music that had preceded it. He loved the big band music of the 20s and 30s, which his father played, the Victorian music hall songs which his relatives would sing around the piano, and the show tunes of the 40s and 50s. Even in the days of Hamburg and the Cavern Club in Liverpool, McCartney had sung Till There Was You, which was included on their album With the Beatles. From these early performances, McCartney must have realized that ballads enriched the Beatles show, and wrote And I Love Her as a first attempt to fill this space. Lennon described it as McCartney's first Yesterday. The initial idea was to write a song with a title that began mid-sentence. When he wrote the song, he was dating actress Jane Asher. For a while, they were the most popular couple in England. After they broke up in 1968, McCartney married Linda Eastman. In a 1984 interview, McCartney stated it was just a love song, it wasn't for anyone. This was probably the chivalrous thing to do, as by then he was 15 years into his marriage to Linda.
She gives me everything, and tenderly the kiss my lover brings, she brings to me, and I love her. A love like ours could never die, as long as...
1965. Help. The Beatles' second feature was filmed over 4 months in 1965 at a number of locations. After accolades for his performance in A Hard Day's Night, Starr was given the starring role in Help. As with the first film, all songs apart from the title track were written without prior knowledge of the script and dropped into the film, wherever there was any excuse for the boys to start playing. The Beatles later expressed dissatisfaction with Help, saying that there'd be no more than extras in their own film. However, it marked the beginning of their most fertile period of songwriting. Lennon wrote the film's title track using the word help to explore his own anxiety.
Yeah, well, once you've been down, either mentally, I mean, I go into these troughs every few years. It was less noticeable in the Beatles because the Beatles' image and thing would carry you through it, you know. I mean, I was in the middle of a trough in Help, you know, but you can't see it, really. I mean, I'm singing Help for a kick-off, you know. But it was less noticeable because you're protected by the image of the power of the Beatles.
Having discovered marijuana in the autumn of 1964, the Beatles were now smoking the drug regularly, and Lennon remembered this as their pot period, describing how reels of the film had to be scrapped because they consisted of the Beatles in fits of uncontrollable laughter. You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. Bob Dylan's music directed Lennon towards a more intense and personal style of writing.
Does it feel the same to you when you're writing something on paper and when you're writing a song, David?
It does now. In the old days, I used to think if songwriting was this, you know, and I love you and you love me, and my writing was something else, you know, even if I didn't think of it quite like that. But then I just realised through Dylan and other people, Bob Dylan, not Thomas, that it is the same thing, you know. That's what I didn't realise, being so naive, and that, you know, you don't write pop songs and then you do that and then you do that. That everything you do is the same thing, so do it the same way.
He began to write songs in which his state of mind became the immediate starting point. In the first lines of You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, the image of Lennon standing facing a wall with his head in his hands was probably a perfect description of how he felt when he was writing. The song is about a relationship that has gone wrong and Lennon's hidden feelings for a girl he has lost.
Everywhere people stare, each and every day, I can see them laugh at me, and I hear them say, hey, you've got to hide your love away. Hey, you've got to hide your...
It was rumoured that this was the first gay rock song, a message to Beatles manager Brian Epstein, warning him to keep his homosexual relationships, which at the time were illegal in Britain, from public view.
I've never directed that the boys should do anything, either sort of song-wise, artistically wise, or speech-wise. We all make up our minds, and I contribute, I suppose, a fifth.
Yesterday. McCartney woke up one morning in his top-floor bedroom at the Ashers home in Wimpole Street with the tune for Yesterday in his head. There was a piano by the bed, and he went straight to it and started playing. Although at that point it had no lyric, McCartney was worried that the tune itself might have been unconsciously plagiarized, and that what had seemed like a flash of inspiration may only have been a surge of recollection.
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be.
He went around to people in the music business for about a month and asked them whether they had ever heard it before. Eventually, it became like handing something in to the police. McCartney thought that if no one claimed it after a few weeks, then he would have it. McCartney wrote this song and was the only Beatle to play on it. It was the first time a Beatle recorded without the others, and marked a shift to more independent accomplishments among the group. While Lennon and McCartney wrote the Beatles' early songs together, by 1965 most of their songs were primarily written by one or the other, although they continued to credit all their songs to Lennon and McCartney. This was the first Beatles song to capture a mass adult market. Most of their fans were young people to this point, but this song gave the band a great deal of credibility among an older crowd. It also became one of their melodic classics, as companies recorded instrumental versions as soothing background noise for shopping centers and elevators.
The Beatles sound of their mop-top era, shall we say, peaks and sort of ends on Help, the British Help, not the American Help, which is a soundtrack album where they galvanized on some of the George Martin incidental music from the movie, which is very good, but it's not the Beatles. The Beatles album Help is an album where they've taken the mop-top as far as they can. It's a brilliant album. We all love it. But it's the last album where they need to sort of have a cover or two to tide them over. It's the last album where they're audibly and lovably these cheeky little Liverpudlians. The next album is, of course, Rubber Soul, and that's the album that just made the west coast of California, the Future Birds, the guys that were in the Birds at the time, but the Buffalo Springfields and the Jefferson Airplane. Rubber Soul is the one that's like, everyone's set up. This isn't just a showbiz boy band act of the era. All those prototype hippies set up.
1966. Revolver. Revolver marked a significant development in the Beatles' sound, as well as the end of an era.
Revolver was their first kind of album like the White Album, that the songs didn't sound, it was almost the same band. For instance, Harrison turns in these Indian songs like Love to You. Ringo sings a sort of music hall-y Yellow Submarine. McCartney sings these wonderful ballads like For No One. And Lennon's doing that crazy psychedelia of She Said, and I'm Only Sleeping. It doesn't even sound like the same record. So by the time you get to Revolver, that's the first album where the Beatles have, Mop Top's gone, doesn't exist anymore. And the Beatles are open for all offers, be it the Tibetan Book of the Dead, be it substances that you smoke that ain't tobacco, be it American R&B, be it Indian music of the Indian subcontinent, be it whatever. That is the first album where all bets are off and every door and every window in the building is open, all of them. Let in what comes in. Whatever the breeze blows in, whatever walks in off the street, we're going to use that for a song.
After this album, all their music was sculpted in the studio with little thought as to whether the songs could be reproduced in concert. Under the influence of the hippie movement in America and the avant-garde art scene in Britain, they had also started to write for a different audience. Encounters with the underground scene and the effect of psychedelic drugs were to alter their perceptions of both themselves and their music. Revolver was an album bursting with new ideas. Although variety has since become the staple of rock and roll, at the time it challenged all the connections of pop. Not only did it introduce musical styles ranging from a children's sing-along to a psychedelic mélange of backward tape loops, but it also presented a strange mix of song topics. Released during what turned out to be their final tour, none of the 14 songs were to be played on stage by the Beatles. They had entered a new phase of being recording artists rather than performers, and were now happy to concentrate on the art of making records rather than having to squeeze their songwriting between touring and frequent appearances on film and television.
Will you be doing films on your own next year? No, I don't want to make a career of it. I did it just because I felt like doing it. And Dick Lester asked me, and I said yes. And I wouldn't have done it if the others hadn't liked it. Yeah. They said fine, because we were on holiday anyway.
Do the others have film ambitions on their own?
No, nobody's particularly interested in it. I'm not all that mad on it.
What do you really want to do? I mean, do you write songs?
I don't know, I just want to do a few things, you know.
Yeah. And you haven't really decided exactly what?
No, I'll try a few things, you know, but I just found out a bit more about films doing that.
Here, there and everywhere. With things starting to look up again in his romance with Jane Asher, McCartney wrote what is widely regarded as his greatest love song. Wanting to work with a structural challenge, he constructed each verse of the song around the 3 adverbs in the title. McCartney wrote Here, There and Everywhere in June 1966 while sitting by Lennon's outdoor pool.
That was the early incentive, you know, if you're honest about it. For most people, it is just to be successful, to earn money. I mean, we used to talk about writing a swimming pool. You know, it was one of those between John and I. It's like, well, you know, you need a pool here. We better go and write it. You know, ching, ching, ching.
Lennon and McCartney both mentioned this as one of the most underrated Beatles songs.
They always draw the comparison to John Lennon, like, you can only draw the comparison with this one guy, but I think the strength of McCartney is his melody, his melodic and harmonic sense is much greater than 99.8% of the people in rock and roll.
McCartney stated that of all the songs he has written, this is his favorite. He likes it best because of the way that it flows together.
The Beatles songs of the 60s were as great a catalogue of songs as I think there has ever been.
So the Beatles stopped performing live in 1967. That's the last time that they do a really professional, formal gig. And so they go into their phase, which is called as the studio years. And we have bands like Revolver, the White Album, and of course the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band come out of that period. And what's really happening is you're seeing a lot more experimentation with sound, with different kinds of rhythm, with different kinds of song structure, psychedelia, those kind of things. And really Sgt. Pepper especially is really seen to be the first concept album. And what I mean by that is there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's a story that's told throughout the whole record, the way that there's different kind of mysticisms running through it. Even the very front cover itself, the Beatles are creating characters, them in almost like military outfits, but them also positioned in this mural with other popular culture figures through time. It creates a whole mood that's beyond just rock and roll. It's a statement piece that I think sets the tone for other records afterwards, but that's definitely the very, very first one. It's like an alternative Beatles reality, if you would.
So in music, we started off like that. So all our early songs are sort of, thank you, girl, from me to you, P.S. I love you. It's all really talking to the fans, trying to get them to buy the records. But then it moves into sort of Eleanor Rigby, whatever. It moves more into the art.
1967. Magical Mystery Tour, Yellow Submarine.
So the Beatles weren't forgotten or in the gutter, you know, but they weren't on the wane, I would say, but they had gone down a notch. The miracle of Sgt. Pepper is here the Beatles, they're #1, and they've kind of fallen off Mount Olympus a little bit. They've gone down the slope, about a quarter of the slope. Pepper comes out, and they've not only gone to the top of Mount Olympus again, they're somewhere in the clouds. Pepper's the one that really, they go into the stratosphere, and they never, you know, they remain pretty much the cultural gods ever since.
The Americans still love you?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
What are you planning to do today?
Sleep.
The songs from this period are the wildest, the most psychedelic collection the Beatles put together, though they were never released together on one record. If the Beatles had wished to release an album straight after Sgt. Pepper in the Summer of Love, this electric bunch of songs would have made a fitting final fanfare for 1967, before the more sober reflections of the following year.
Or the Beatles started it. They, you know, you look at Beatles record, it's a work of art. That's why or the Rolling Stones. I'm just learning from those who went before.
All You Need Is Love. May the 18th, 1967, the Beatles signed a contract to appear as Britain's representative on Our World, which was to be broadcast live internationally on June the 25th. The Beatles were asked to write a simple song that viewers of all nationalities would understand to mark the occasion. Writing began with Lennon and McCartney working on separate compositions, until Lennon's All You Need Is Love emerged as the obvious choice. The song not only had simple words and an uncomplicated tune, but it perfectly captured the aspirations of international youth in the summer of 1967. This was the time when the war in Vietnam reached its height, and the Love generation showed their opposition by staging several peaceful protests. The nice thing about it is that it can't be misinterpreted. It is a clear message saying that love is everything. Lennon was fascinated by the power of slogans to unite people and was determined to write something of his own. "I like slogans," Lennon once said. "I like advertising. I love the telly." When asked in 1971 whether songs like Give Peace a Chance and Power to the People were propaganda songs, he answered, "Sure, so was All You Need Is Love. I'm a revolutionary artist. My art is dedicated to change."
These guys wrote songs, they wrote music, they wrote tunes, and so they're going to be as good as 100 years as they are today.
Viewers of Our World saw a recreation of a Beatles recording session. A party atmosphere was created in Abbey Road's Studio One by inviting celebrity friends to sit around, hold balloons, wave placards, and join in on the chorus. The single was released on July the 7th and became the soundtrack song for the Summer of Love, an ode to peace, love, and understanding. They had one message for the world: love. We need more love in the world.
All you need is love. All you need is love. All you need is love.
1968 marked a new period in the Beatles' songwriting, when cleaning up, straightening out, and getting back to basics became the order of the day.
Inspired to write any music?
Well, yes. Written about 10 songs while we were away.
Could you oblige us with one?
Oh, no, I can't play it on this. This is picked up in Tehran.
1969, Abbey Road. Seven years on from their first recordings at the Abbey Road studios, the Beatles returned for what proved to be their final sessions together. Back in 1962, they were wide-eyed provincial lads keen to make their mark on the music business. By 1969, they had become world-weary sophisticates, their lives blighted by power and money struggles. The songs on Abbey Road reflected their frustrations. They're about legal negotiations, unpaid debts, being ripped off, bad karma, and generally bearing the weight of the world on your shoulders. Despite this mood, or perhaps because of it, Abbey Road was an outstandingly inventive farewell offering.
With John and Ringo married, how long before Paul follows George, who's just married 21-year-old model Patty Boyd?
Love, you're the one that I'd be thinking of. If I needed someone, if I had some more time to spend.
Something. When artists such as Frank Sinatra pick out your work and label it as the greatest love song of the past 50 years, you know you're doing something right.
Somewhere in a smile, she knows that I don't need no other lover. Something in her style that shows me I don't want to leave her now. You know I believe in how.
Something will forever remain a special track for Harrison. Not only was it the first song he was able to release with the Beatles as a fully fledged single, but it was also the first song for the Beatles to reach #1 that wasn't suffixed with written by Lennon and McCartney.
Something is one of the most popular songs of all time. It's up there, not far behind McCartney's Yesterday, as the most covered song of all time. It's way up there. It's in the top 10.
For that reason alone, the Abbey Road number became a moment of utter pride for the guitarist who had struggled to impose his songwriting will on the Fab Four. But the song also worked as a clear indicator of Harrison's bright solo future away from the band and his chaotic life at the time of writing. Many people have toyed with who the song might be for. Whether it was written for Patty Boyd or the universe as a whole is up for debate. Harrison later claimed he didn't have anyone in mind when he wrote it. He was really into his studies of Krishna consciousness when he wrote the song, and its original intent was a devotion to Lord Krishna.
As you get older, you think, did I waste my time spending all this money and effort and many hours with the music of these people and thinking about them? And one of the beautiful things about the Beatles is the music still stands up. So when you get older, I was thrilled that my teenage daughter wanted to know about the Beatles, thrilled. And she agreed with me. Here in the 21st century, they were fabulous. They really, really were that good. They really will go down as a milestone, as a cultural importance, as Shakespeare or the Royals or whomever, you know. They will. It is not schoolboy fantasy. They will go down as one of the great things this country has produced. The Fab Four, they will.
And people feel that, well, why is she going on about it, you know? And I think that John was such a great friend of mine, aside of everything else. And he's not here now to do his own work. So that it's only fair that I would try to keep his spirit and music going. Not just for ourselves, the family, but I think his spirit and music were very, very significant for a lot of people, and still is.
Lennon himself, perhaps, should have the last word here.
As Americans
Although every album had different influences and an individual style, there was always a link to love. Romantic love, desperate love, sexual love, and just love as a universal feeling. They were ever present in their albums and singles.
Well, you know, yeah, it's like that. You know, if things that happen to you in your day, I think it comes into your songs. But it's strange where they come from. I couldn't begin to tell you, really.
Spreading the message of love became their mantra. In the height of troubled times, they wanted to bring peace by preaching, all you need is love.
I have great memories of those times. We made great music, you know, so I'm really proud of the music we all made.
Close your eyes and I'll kiss you. Tomorrow I'll miss you. Remember, I'll always be true. And then while I'm away, I'll write home every day. And I'll send all my loving to you. I'll pretend that I'm kissing the lips.
50 years after the band stopped playing, those songs still mean something to us. They are like old friends, and we hold them in such affection. The stories behind the lyrics bring us closer to the Fab Four and their amazing legacy. And it's no wonder those tracks have stood the test of time.
What do you define as a Beatle?
As what we are, you know, a group, singing and selling records. That's what I wanted to do.